I welcome here today all to the Rehabilitation Center, and I know we have been discussing it very frequently in our presentations also, that rehabilitation is an integral form of low vision, which we have totally neglected. I think many practitioners are not actually aware of what is the services which are provided to our patients and how they actually become independent and more functional with the support of these rehab centers. So our low vision patient or our visually impaired patient needs to be guided very well upon this. And to do this, we have none other than our good dear friend Shalini Khanna, who is the director of the NAB, the National Association of Blind Women Center in Delhi, Hoskas. Along with her is Karuna, who is the deputy director of this NAB center. And she said that yes, she could be introduced as a patient also, and we have a lot more to hear from her. So my first conversation I will bring in is to Shalini, and just asking her the process in general, how her rehabilitation center works and what are the facilities they bring forward.
Thank you, Dr. Monica and Dr. Anita also. It's a great opportunity to be able to address this. I feel that a lot of people don't really talk about rehabilitation. See, the Center for Blind Women started in 2002. Why we started only for women is another story altogether, because blind women are very disadvantaged and parents don't let them come out of their homes to get rehabilitated because of all the social evils that they are afraid of. And it's a residential center because most of the blind or low vision people have the foremost problem in mobility, in moving around. And since they have a problem in moving around, everything else becomes a larger problem then. You know, how to go from your home to the school or to the college or to the workplace or anywhere. And this becomes a major fear in the patient herself or himself, because they start feeling their life is over and now they are totally confined in four walls of home. So we started the center after a study called Status of Blind Women in India, and a lot of facts that we figured out which were terrible to see. In the center, we rehabilitate low vision and blind girls by way of computer education to enter into employments into banks and BPOs and KPOs and wherever they can work. You know, if they're educated enough, then they need the computer's knowledge and they can do their work much more efficiently. But we also rehabilitate a lot of uneducated girls, and that is in a manual kind of trades. Like we have a spa which is run by blind women. We have a cafe where we train them to run cafes, to run spas, and also into handicraft, because they're not so educated. And why are they not so educated? I have a lot of graduates, a lot of doctors, because you know what happens, the village people, poverty and blindness or any disability is very interlinked in this country. And when the parents start taking their child who's losing sight in the childhood or who's born blind, when they start taking them to the doctors, I understand that doctors also need their own time to test out and to research on the child. But throughout this journey of checking the child, this child particularly is not able to go to the school because the parents don't know where to take them most of the time. But still, in those years, they do send the children to some kind of educational institution. The worst part is adulthood. You might be knowing, of course, that there are a lot of adults or adolescents who lose their sight gradually because of retinitis pigmentosa or optical nerve problems or many accidents. And it's at this time when they suddenly get some problem in the eye, they can't really go to the college. They can't move themselves. Nobody at home can take them to their college or school every day. I'm talking about, say, class 9th or 8th or 10th, and the child stops going to the educational institution. They are taken only to the doctor by their parents whenever the doctor calls them, and they don't know what else to do. There is no talk of rehabilitation by most doctors. Nobody tells them that there is an alternative method to start your life. And they keep trying to restore their eyesight, which does not happen in most cases, especially in retinitis pigmentosa. And so many girls we have seen who have lost 7 years, 8 years, 10 years at home, and they have lost totally their personality, their identity, their confidence, their will to live, their purpose to live. They just become an individual sitting at home. According to parents, they need only food and shelter. I can't even begin to tell you that it's worse than dying. It's worse than ending a life. You're living, but you're not living. So rehabilitation is a topic that we really need doctors to talk about. Only after they come to the center that we can start counseling them, we start identifying what kind of work can you do, what kind of jobs can you get into, and what kind of trainings can we give you.
Thank you so much for sharing what rehabilitation services are all about. I have a question. As a eye care practitioner, when we see a case of retinitis pigmentosa, we know that it is not a reversible condition. It is going to be progressive. So when I see a child walk in with some amount of vision, and I know this child is going to be losing vision eventually, so why not start rehabilitation services at the beginning itself, as soon as they are identified with the condition, rather than wait till they turn profoundly visually impaired and then push them into a rehabilitation service? I think most of the time you would end up seeing children or adults or adolescents walking into a center with profound visual impairment. Why don't we start it earlier? What is the kind of stigma or taboo attached to sending a child who has reasonable visual acuity, I would say, vision, and start rehabilitating, make them aware that eventually they might be losing their vision? Why not sensitize them towards it? Will that be a better approach rather than wait for them to have a profound visual impairment?
I think a whole book can be written on this topic, this particular chapter. I would encourage Karuna to share here, because she started losing her sight very early due to retinitis pigmentosa, and very fortunately her doctor identified at a very early age, which is another big barrier. Retinitis pigmentosa is not identified only before adolescence, and by the time a child is in adolescence age, a lot of personality is already formed. A lot of peer pressure is already playing a big role in your life. Where are you studying? How are you dressing up? What are you doing? What are your future plans? Your parents have plans for you. You have plans for yourself. And suddenly everything is completely stalled, paused, when you get to know that you have a progressive eyesight problem of retinitis pigmentosa, which has no cure right now in this country. Karuna, would you like to share here the kind of stigmas a person herself or himself goes through, and the parents also, and the family? And then I'll come back to it.
Sure. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Monica, Dr. Anita, and Shalini ma'am that they have thought that I can be a part of this useful and fruitful discussion. So I belong to Punjab, and way back in 1989, when I was around 9 years of age, so my parents took me to the doctor because I was having reading and writing problems, and I was experiencing some kind of night blindness. I'm using this particular vocabulary because I was getting aware of the problem, but I was not able to express myself. And as I was also having introvert kind of personality, so I would not, discuss all those things with my parents, but they were, very particular. So my mom tells me that I was studying in a government semi-government school, and she told me that one day my mathematics teacher called her in the school, and she didn't explain anything to her, but she just said, just take care of her eyes and give her, almonds and everything. So my mother also didn't understand what is she saying, and she probably must have discussed it with my father. And then they both decided that I should be taken to an eye care professional. So I was taken to a hospital, and at the age of 9 or 10, it was written on my prescription that I am suffering from RP. Okay. So they gave some medicines and a spectacle to wear, so which we started in normal course of life. But that at the age of 9 or 10, I just asked my doctor that, doctor, whenever I used to study mathematics in algebra, I find it difficult to understand the rays of powers. I am not able to read that. So in that particular thing, what should be done? So the doctor didn't say anything. He said, go, I have written your prescription. I have medicines, and wear that, spectacle. And literally with that spectacle also, I was having a lot of difficulties. So I am not blaming doctors here, because lack of awareness is there, because they don't understand what a patient is going through, and the patient is also dependent कि वो कौन सी age में है, वो childhood में है या क्या है, adult है. He or she must be going through so much in her own head that she is not able to explain. And also, as a child, you are not in an authoritarian position to, literally ask. If you don't give answer to my question, then I will left that place. And the doctor also told my parents कि इसको पढ़ाई छुड़वा दो या कम करा दो, because it will strain her eyes.
Oh my God.
So it didn't affect me too much, because at that time I was not aware, but I am a deep believer of life. Shalini ma'am is also there. We have a lot of discussions about this. So as a child, I was a great believer of life. So I thought it's my karma to study now, whatever it is. So I didn't think much that whatever will happen to my eyesight. But at the same time, it acted as a boon for me that doctor didn't tell me that I am going to lose it eventually, or going to,
that it was a progressive disorder was not explained to you.
Absolutely.
This is also my problem with doctors. So when Anita says that I know it is progressive and I should tell the child to go to rehabilitation, the problem is most of the doctors don't say this. Most of the doctors, they don't say that you are eventually going to keep calling you for further tests and further treatment and further treatment. And so, yes, a lot of doctors have told me it's our duty, moral duty, to keep the hope up of a patient. I understand that. I completely understand that you should not kill hopes in a person. But how about a reality check? You have to tell the realities also to the person, because, mostly retinitis pigmentosa comes at 17, 18, not so fortunately like Karuna faced it at 9. And at 16, 17, 18, if you are not telling the reality to the person and you keep calling them for the next test or for the next trial or for the next trial, how many young years do you want the person to lose?
I agree.
I understand that the person also doesn't want to accept. That's the second part of the story. There are three parts. Second part is that the person doesn't want to accept कि मेरी eyesight चली जाएगी. हम ट्राई करते ही रहते हैं, कुछ तो हो जाएगा, कुछ तो ठीक हो जाएगा. हर एक इंसान होप पे जिंदा है, और वो जरूरी भी है, वो बहुत जरूरी है to keep your hopes up. लेकिन कोई तो राइट टाइम निर्धारित होना चाहिए कि अब डॉक्टर ये बता दे दैट आपको कोई ना कोई ऑल्टरनेटिव मेथड चूज करना पड़ेगा टू लीड द प्रिंट ability of your life.
So,
Because
it's an eye-opener. What you're talking today is a real eye-opener, because we really, as a practitioners, in fact, Karuna can express her feelings. Suppose as a practitioner at your age, it may be not to you, but to your parents, the idea was given. Of course, many of the patients read through the internet when the diagnoses are made, and that itself is bad because there's so much of explosion. So what do you think, Karuna, if your parents were told at that age to you that this is progressive and you might lose and things like that, how would that taking or things be? Because we're really going to learn this lesson today, and we're going to forward it to our colleagues and practitioners who are listening to this, that this is the way we should express. Of course, I believe it hasn't to come in a harsh way. Kuch nahi ho sakta, blind ho jaoge. I don't want my practitioners and colleagues to be talking like this.
Yeah, nobody wants.
But please express it out. Would it be really wrong, or majority would not accept it, or majority would accept it?
So, Dr. Monica, first of all, I really appreciate that a doctor, a surgeon doesn't have that much time to counsel the patient. But in these particular cases where the doctor knows that this eye condition is a deadly one, so I think the responsibility towards patient is double, I guess. And as a patient also, it will come naturally eventually when they are finding that the doctor they are going to, they consider him or her like, God-like figure first of all, and they will listen to him or her anything he wants to communicate. So they trust him or her. So at that particular time, if my doctor would have elaborated this particular condition even to me, because I am going through that particular condition, not even my parents, So I think it makes a lot of sense if we talk about this eye condition in a very, very simpler manner. And eventually we should apprise the patient and their caregivers about the ultimate result, even with certain kind of hope that, low vision devices are there or rehabilitation is there. Just that we need to build a parallel system that, okay, you are able to see today, but what if you are going to lose your eyesight at a later age? Better to introduce technology. For example, if a patient is having temporary disability, you are having some kind of accident and you have bandage on your left foot. So for those particular days, you use some kind of walker or, wheelchair. So at that time, you are mentally ready that these things are a part of life and you can be ready for anything. And this is just a problem. You have to seek solution for that particular problem.
So I would continue my question in that itself, to say that what is the process? Because as a doctor, what I have understood, when we wanted to refer these patients to the rehab center, they literally had to go through a process of those medical certification and being declared as a blind or a legally blind, and then the registration can only, or the rehab center would admit them. So how do you integrate that into the process?
I think Shalini ma'am would like to.
Yeah, so yes, you're right, Monica. It is. सबसे पहले वो term is such a big stigma.
Yeah, the blind.
Blindness. The parents don't want to accept. The person doesn't want to accept. But if the doctor tells you like this, that your vision is losing and you might really have a low vision to start with, and you might need help of some technology and some alternative ways of reading, writing, working, and it's better to go into a rehabilitation center to understand how well can you manage this. See, maybe first instance the patient doesn't want to. Yeah, we have had people who were guided by their doctors to come to the center, but they still want to take time. ये doctor के साथ नहीं चल रहा है, so then some Ayurvedic doctor का hope हो जाता है. Some homeopathic doctor has given the hope that okay, this medicine can make some difference. So of course they keep trying to restore the eyesight rather than come to rehabilitation. But there's a big difference. When the doctor has told you there are alternatives available, you have it at the back of your mind all the time that there is a plan B. That if this fails, and if this treatment also fails, and if this treatment also fails, I have a plan B to go back to. I understand the word blind brings a lot of stigma to people who lose sight later in life, not to the people who are born. Really, I mean, if you come into my center and the girls who are born blind, if you ask them, okay, what should I call you? Person with disability, divyang, disabled, ye, wo, they say, please, yeah, give me a break. Call me blind. I'm fine.
Oh my.
And people like me are very touchy.
So
in
Karuna
fact,
is
I
now
have actually been talking about it to other patients also, and one of them who sent a recording for us so for this session. She also said it is really hurting. It's hurting and it is like, don't do that to us, you know. This is literally, I think I'm learning it at the end of my career, I would say. I wish somebody could have guided me how to talk. And Shalini, your words are really meaning a lot, which goes as a tagline when you said, to a practitioner, at least we can say that you are going to have no vision. At least it's not telling them blind, but this word will be really a meaningful word to say.
Absolutely. Say that you're losing some vision, partially sighted, you have a partial vision now, and tell that person that, you know, whatever is your remnant vision, you can do a lot with it.
Yes.
And the vision that is lost, there are kind of remedies, not to treat it, but there are alternative ways. There are alternative ways to live. It's all right. So, with a low vision, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. There are so many ways things can happen. Let the doctor tell them these things. That I don't know all the rehabilitation ways, but in a rehab center, you might actually understand how to study better. Believe me, Monica, that initially when the girls come, they feel very scared. I'm going to a blind school. I'm going to a blind center. It's a stigma. Because the world has made it a stigma. I mean, nobody else. And to walk with a stick, it's the most terrible stick. When they come to the center and they see so many more like them, and they see people managing cooking, and they see people managing computers and the reception and so much, they start feeling some confidence that life has not stopped for me. And after 10-15 days, they start actually feeling more comfortable that, oh, there are so many more like me, you know, who can manage their life in spite of worse problems than me sometimes. And it's all fine. And I'm actually learning to start living again.
Wonderful.
So I feel more than the patient. First, the doctors should be taken on rounds to most rehab centers.
I think we'll be coming back to you. I think there's so much to open up and understand at the practitioner level. That more than what we will be teaching is this. I would tell you something, because, you know, when I was speaking to one of my patients recently and the life totally went online, you know, you have your 5-year-old or a 7-year-old child, also low vision patient, and they have to study online. And uski mom is telling me that this hand magnifiers and kaise computer padhaun usko? You know, how do I teach it? So all this generation now needs to know everything about the today's time. Everybody needs to know how to work on these.
Monica, start a series of talks. I would love to even tell some television channel or radio channels to start broadcasting these talks. It's so important.
Shalini ma'am really pointed out that you have to instill that seed right at the first go itself with the parent as well as the child when they walk into your clinic, that there is an alternative life, there is light at the end of the tunnel. So this is going to be playing in their mind all the while, no matter where they go for any alternative treatment or people who are giving them hopes that they can restore vision and stuff like that. But then at the back of the mind, that seed has been instilled that yes, there is a visual impairment, this is a progressive condition, and there are alternative methods where the child or the person can lead an independent and a dignified life. Because as practitioners, we all have the textbook knowledge, we know that there are magnifiers and stuff like that, but then we have to treat them holistically. We have to take their emotional well-being and the physical disability into account when you are approaching a low vision patient and treat them human enough. and not just discard as another case where I can dispense a high-end low vision device. I think as practitioners, we also have to have a different approach, and this has to happen both ways. These are my thoughts.
I think at a low vision center or a ophthalmologist clinic who's dealing with retinal pigmentosa or optical nerve problems, the first desk should be a counselor, and a low vision person should be sitting there. It makes so much of a difference. Excellent. Don't you think if Karuna is talking to a person who has a low vision, it makes such a huge difference when Karuna says, you still have life. Okay?
Oh my God, that's an excellent thought you brought in.
You can work, you can work on the computer, you can do so much. Don't worry. Because when they see this, they feel, all right, I'm not losing my hope. Otherwise, life can go in so many twists and turns. Losing eyesight is not easy.
I am so grateful for that thought. And I think we will try to hammer this out to our friends who are going to set up this low vision practices. That this is the solution here for your patients. If you don't have time to talk, leave it to that person to talk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Karuna feels angry when, I tell people she's low vision, speak to her. She hates it. But I know what they gain from there. Their eyesight, their pupils are dilated and they feel, really? You mean that? Because when you come to the center, nobody can figure out Karuna is low vision. Yeah. But that's the message, that once you're trained and you can use technology and you can use your brains, which have not gone off at all, you are so much into life.
डिस्कवरिंग हेल्थ की ट्रेनिंग ले रही हूँ, जो कि ब्रेस्ट कैंसर डिटेक्शन का कोर्स है, जिसमें कि हम अपने हाथों से ही ब्रेस्ट कैंसर को डिटेक्ट कर लेते हैं, जो कि 0.5 सेंटीमीटर तक के लंप भी हम डिटेक्ट कर पाते हैं। इस वजह से हम लोगों को अननेसेसरी रेडिएशन से बचा सकते हैं।
मैंने नैब इंडिया सेंटर दिल्ली से स्पा ट्रेनिंग ली है। उसके बाद मेरा पेयू कंपनी में नौकरी लग गई। मैं यदि ट्रेनिंग नहीं करती तो शायद मेरी कहीं नौकरी नहीं लगती और मैं घर में ही रहती। तो अब मुझे नौकरी करने के बाद बहुत अच्छा लगता है। मैं एज अ मैच्योर पेयू कंपनी में वर्क करती हूँ।
If you look at people these days, these are sedentary lifestyle. Like people spend hours working on laptops, they come up with backache, body ache. There is more absenteeism.
Previously, I was having continuous pain in my neck and in like my hands and all because I was sitting for 7 to 8 hours. After visiting her, I feel a lot of difference because my neck pain is almost gone.
सेंटर की ही हेल्प रहा जो मैं इतना आगे बढ़ सकी, रास्तों पे चलना आया। अभी मेरा केबीएस में भी सिलेक्शन हो गया है और मैं आगे गवर्नमेंट जॉब में भी जाऊंगी।
हुनर की रेखा हाथों में बना ली है, देखो मैंने, ये साथ साथ चल रही है, मैं आगे आगे बढ़ रही हूँ।
As I told you, we run a cafe by blind people and we love it. They can give you the best bread and the best cakes because, again, a sense of timing and precision is what teach them. The spa, the Japanese therapy where if you have cervicals and spondylitis, believe me, you go to a physiotherapist, you will keep going and it will not get cured. But if you come to our Japanese therapists who are totally blind and they are taken in that therapy because they are blind, because they have this very sensitive sense of touch to figure out which nerves in your body are blocked. In Japan, I saw blind therapists at every fourth store on the road, and people come to them for heart attacks, people come to them for infertility, people come to them for all sorts of problems. The kitchen, I have already told you, spa, we have told you, handicraft is something. Now we are in fact training so many people in the community who have been rendered jobless because of COVID, and they're sitting at home and they're making amazing stuff. And last, coming to the computer-oriented skills, there is no end to it. They can go and work in the call centers. They can go and work in banks. You can find leadership trainers who are blind in IBM and Concentric. You can find bank general managers and managers who are totally blind, not even low vision. So low vision को तो हम disability नहीं मानते, मतलब center में कि तुम्हें तो थोड़ा बहुत दिख तो रहा है तो बस ठीक है, बाकी तो हम सिखा लेंगे। अगर वो जितना दिखाई देने की जरूरत है थोड़ा बहुत कभी कभी वो तुम्हें दिख रहा है, and the rest you just have to start thinking in a non-visual way.
Wonderful.
To teach people who have lost sight, you have to stop thinking of chairs, whether they are red or green or white. You can think shape. You can just think the role.
And Shalini, before we just actually conclude this session, so that we want people to take home the key message that came in today, and of course we'll come up with many more messages. I know you're also handling the sexual harassment and other things, which is very dear to your heart. So do you come across these problems with the visually impaired people also?
So many.
More of it?
It's terrible. They face the sexual harassment, even rapes and assaults at their own home, within their own relatives. It's a terrible mindset, as if the sexual need is, so much in everyone. There are sexual needs in blind women also, of course, they're human beings. But their own family members think them as very easy pawns sometimes. They feel that who's gonna marry you? You're not going to, have a partner. So big deal, you are available here to kind of just be taken for granted. I think sometimes when my girls have been sexually assaulted, that's the only time I have felt blindness is a disability. She could not run away. She could not figure out where the man was walking from. That's the only time when another person has been so violent with them that I have felt, oh, blindness is a disability. Otherwise, every day of the last 24 years I've been working with them and I have never felt it's a disability. I have always felt, okay, it's a problem to which you have to figure out a solution.
Karuna, you would definitely have so many things to teach us. Would you like to come up again to end up this session?
I myself have learned so much through this session and listening from the mouth of some doctors that how they are passionately associated with their profession. So just a little request, as we have already discussed, that please introduce your patient to his or her future life if we know the reality. Of course, in a subtle manner at the very start, but it's a complete responsibility that your patient also knows what is the reality. So I think this is a message.
Thank you so much.
I'm immensely grateful that we could have Shalini and Karuna today with us to share their thoughts, and the amount of work that they do is commendable, to say the least. In fact, this conversation has kind of opened our eyes. Let me say that. So we are now open, and now we know that there is a different approach to handling low vision and the blind population. Thank you so much from Learn Beyond Vision. I think the main objective of our course is to bring eye care at the primary eye care level, low vision services and rehabilitation services, not make it so exclusive only to the tertiary eye care center, but make it accessible at the primary level, so that you don't have to travel miles away to reach a rehabilitation center.